know, I'm hoping it'll fall and then I'll get a new one for Christmas. Well, I consider this a great privilege and honor to be here to speak on behalf of my daughter, my firstborn, and this is my first political speech, so bear with me as I have to make sure my notes are right. My teleprompter, yes. I'm not maybe as cool and smooth as some of the more notable politicians with teleprompters, but I'll do my best. Thank you. You know, my first venture into politics, and I say this rather embarrassingly, was the election of Jimmy Carter. Back in the 70s, that was the first presidential election I ever cast a vote for. And I was not a party man. I voted for Jimmy Carter only because he said he was a Christian. And I know that there were probably a lot of other Christians that did the very same. So I decided I was going to never be that foolish again. And I began to educate myself on politics. I began to educate myself on the political process, the two-party system, what they stood for. Democratic Party, because Carter was, when I found out what the platform.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I said I could never vote Democrat again. And I also said that I never wanted my family to make the same mistake that I did. So I got my family involved from the very beginning on the political process. I'll keep talking. You get rather familiar. I like you, Robert, but whew, oh. You know, you and Herman Cain are going to be in trouble. No. So we got involved, and I started out just kind of as a beginner, and I got more and more involved. And I got my kids involved, and Heidi being the oldest, she was one of the first ones to incur my wrath if she didn't agree to go putting up signs with me or going to the phone bank and making calls on behalf of candidates. And all my kids, Heidi and Elizabeth and Jordan and Ian, our two sons who aren't here, were very embarrassed. The years we had to drive around with these big signs on your roof, you know, they were kind of like banana boats, and they had names on the side, and we were driving around in a community of about 1,200 people, and everybody knew my car, and everybody knew who we were voting for. So they endured those years and moved on from that. Heidi has accomplished an awful lot in her life. Heidi graduated from high school at the age of 16, valedictorian of her class in 1987. She tried to enter into West Point, much to her chagrin. She was too young. She was 16 when she applied. She had to be 17 to even qualify for West Point. So her dream shattered of not being able to go to West Point. She thought she'd go to Duke. And I wasn't rich, but she thought she'd go to Duke, and but she was too late. The applications were already ceased on that. So she ended up going to Marquette University, and she entered into international affairs. And she graduated from Marquette in 1991 with honors. The thing that impressed me more than that was that while she was an undergraduate, she entered into the United States Army as an enlisted person. And that's not a major accomplishment because our whole family has been military, from my father to my brothers to me and now to our kids. But the thing that really surprised me is that she went airborne. Now, to military guys, you might know what airborne is, but to those that don't, that means there's a group of people who jump out of perfectly good airplanes, thousands of feet down, in the dark and in the light, and I don't know. I just think they're all crazy. but she did make it as an airborne. Once she graduated from college, she did become an officer in the United States Army and was a part of the Adjutant General's Corps. That's not her greatest accomplishments. I think her greatest accomplishments has been that she's been a wife, a mother, and then subsequent to that, she's a businesswoman, a writer, a consultant, and yes, even an evil lobbyist. Fortunately, she was a citizens lobbyist in Austin and not a corporate lobbyist, and didn't have a lot of money in her pockets, which is probably to her benefit. Heidi is not ignorant of what faces her as an uncompromising legislator. She enters this race with her eyes wide open, and she knows she'll be a target, even more so, maybe even a threat to the entrenched establishment and the status quo. I think that Heidi is probably one of the most qualified individuals to enter into a political arena. She has worked on other campaigns. She's worked behind the scenes to make others successful. She helped me in the last campaign, the first campaign for Congressman Paul Ryan, and I'm glad to say he's been in Congress for now 7 terms. And he's probably one of the shining stars of the future for the Republican Party up in Washington, D.C. I say that to just say this in kind of conclusion, is that if you have any questions or doubts about this girl's background and her origins, I guarantee you it's a background of a well-educated, well-trained individual. One who does not fear the challenges that lie before her. I mean, who else is going to jump out of perfectly good airplanes except somebody who's fearless? And she's not afraid to speak her mind. And here's a little story. When Heidi was very young, and my family still hasn't forgiven me for this, I took it upon myself to make Heidi stand in front of our church and speak from the pulpit when she was a young girl. And this was the hardest thing for her to do, I think, in her life up to that point. And I don't know if she ever forgave me for it. But I believe that she learned some things back then that will serve her well now. She's been taught from the very beginning of her life to know good from evil, right from wrong, and she's been trained to face her fears and to accomplish remarkable things. So on that part, I wholeheartedly endorse Heidi Thiess for the House of Representatives in the state of Texas.